Hello, friends, and welcome to another edition of Transformational Astrology. We're going to be talking about this new moon that is actually happening as we speak. So this is unusual. We usually try to be a day or two ahead of it, but this time we're right on the schedule of it. We're still in the 12 o'clock hour. 12:12 was the new moon, precisely. So you get to share in the energy of this new moon, just like we're sharing in the energy of this new moon as we broadcast. So that's fun. And also, we did not pre-announce this session. In case you're wondering how come it's come along and you didn't get the pre-announcement, we didn't make one. We've been kind of casual about that because we've been getting our act together. To tell you the truth, we've had a lot of things going on. It's been very crazy times, but we are going to be pre-announcing these a few days ahead of time as we can. And even though we didn't pre-announce, we'll still do a little question and answer for those of you that pick up on this as it comes through your feed, your news feed. So if you're interested in a question, go ahead and make a comment, and try to keep the questions general so that everybody can learn from it. Don't say, what about my chart? Say, what about this configuration that everybody might participate in? So that is the preamble, and without further ado, let's go to the chart. So here we have the chart of this new moon, and once again, we have a very powerful lunation. I think you could see 26 degrees of Libra out of the 30 degrees per sign is where the sun and moon are, 26 degrees and 35 minutes. Uranus is at 26 degrees of Aries in 31 minutes. So very, very, very close, tight opposition between the new moon and Uranus. This isn't new. I mean, we've been having it the last few lunations. The August 21st lunation, namely the eclipse, the American eclipse, was a new moon, and it absolutely was in the same degree, not opposite, of course, but it was a trine to Uranus. The previous new moon on September 19th made an aspect, also a partile aspect to Uranus, and partile meaning the same degree. And this is a partile opposition with only a few minutes of a degree separating the new moon energy, which is always a powerful energy. This is the chart for the next 30 days. Therefore, that's why we make such a big deal about it. The full moon as well, and the quarter moon to some extent also. The quarter moons are important too. But anyway, here we are at the beginning of a new cycle. It's a Libra cycle, so Venus becomes important. Venus is also in its own sign of Libra, and that's important to recognize also. And we find that Mercury and Mars are in what's called mutual reception, with Mercury being in Scorpio, Mars ruling Scorpio being in Mercury sign of Virgo, 28 degrees of Virgo. So therefore contributing also to the Uranus aspect. So Uranus is really emphasized right now. And as I say, has been these last couple of months. And boy, we sure have seen a lot of new things, surprises, unexpected events, plutonic you could call it, because people have lost, in some cases, everything they owned. It's been quite a series of these kind of events, including the shooting in Las Vegas, including the hurricanes in Houston and the Florida coast and Puerto Rico, including disasters in the Washington hurricane season that's been on since the beginning of the year, and then Washington, D.C., and then, of course, there's, not to mention the Hollywood scandals that have rocked specifically the Weinstein Company, which is one of the biggest production companies in Hollywood. So, I mean, it's just been one thing after another, including recently there was an article in the San Francisco Chronicle that, there's the Me Too movement that so many women are speaking up, and a lot of women are saying, well, you can pretty much guarantee that there's been harassment. Any woman you know is likely to have been in some sort of situation of harassment. And in Sacramento, which is the capital of not the nation, but this California state that I happen to live in, where we're operating from, there's a pervasive climate of sexual harassment with junior members of the political establishment up there when they deal with men in power. So men in power, that reminds you of the Pluto element, which has been very strong lately, not quite so much in this lunation here. The previous lunation in September made a T-square. No, I'm sorry, it was the previous new moon, the previous full moon at the beginning of October made a T-square to Pluto. So we've had Plutonic things coming out. We have Jupiter in Scorpio now as well, which is Pluto's sign. It does bring a lot of intensity to and expanding notions and some light being shed on some of these issues of the depths. So there's that Plutonic side of things as emphasized by Jupiter just recently on October 10th going into Scorpio. But the surprise factor is definitely there. And, things that we don't expect, like the shooting from a 30-second story down onto a concert like that, it was so unbelievable and startling. And we have to ask ourselves, what is it for? What's the higher purpose? Where can we go from here? Where do we learn something? And we have to remember also that Chiron, which is at 25 now instead of 26, but at 25 degrees of Pisces, Chiron's been involved in all these lunations as well. And Chiron, representing the wounded healer, is a way for us to get a better handle on what is going on at deep levels within our own psyches, within the psyche as well of the nation, what we're experiencing as a nation as we go through these traumatic times, really. And as we go through these uncertain times as well, because we almost don't know what's next, from the possibilities of nuclear war to, healthcare being eliminated for many Americans. A lot of things that seem very scary. So how do we deal with this? It's very difficult to keep your head up, and you've lost your home and your belongings, and yet you can still say, well, this is a new beginning. It's difficult. It's a challenge. But really the goal and the benefit of all this is a greater conscious understanding of what's going on. Where do we really stand? What are our deepest values that we can articulate? Because remember that Eris represents the new planet Eris beyond Pluto, which I'll show you is right here, close to Uranus at 23 degrees. Incidentally, Saturn is at 23 degrees of another fire sign, so there's a trine, this strong blue line here, supporting Eris in that way, that making it more dedicated and more longer lasting, more concrete in its action. And meanwhile, also Eris is amplifying the presence of Saturn, so that Saturn is more directed, more amplified in its conservative empowerment, which is a big factor these days. And of course, with Uranus on the one side of this trine and Saturn on the other side of this trine, that is a polarity of progressive versus conservative values, which we're seeing big time. We have seen for some time, of course, too. In any case, Eris representing a sort of a warrior energy, a fighter for what you most deeply believe, which if you have a strong Eris in your chart and you don't know what you most deeply believe, then you're all over the place. But when you can zero in on what that is and focus on that, and this is true of every single person, whether you've got a strong Eris or not, but the strong Eris people are the pioneers, the ones that really change things, the feminist leaders, paradigm shifters. I've researched all of these. I couldn't find a feminist leader that didn't have a strong Eris. So standing up for what you most deeply believe, articulating that viewpoint, and that kind of protects you, because it's no matter what. It's okay, because no matter what gets thrown at you, you've got your values, you've got what you most sincerely and deeply believe, and you've got what you're continuing to articulate in support of that, and that makes a huge difference in how you go through life, how happy you are in your profession or whatever it is you're up to. Because if you can connect with those deep values, then you're doing what you're supposed to do. You're here for a reason, and you're working that way. Whereas if you're working against yourself, then of course you're in another bag another bundle of people that aren't very satisfied with their lives at times, So that's the situation we have that's emphasized now with this strong presence of Eris as well as strong presence of Uranus, progressive values versus conservative values of holding back. And both are important, to be fair, we have to indicate that it is very important to have a lot of fairness, to have a lot of reliance on the laws, to hold back, that you could say that Saturn has a sort of regulatory legal action. I heard somebody say that, cars kill more people than guns. Hospital deaths kill more people, perhaps, than guns. And they were citing one other thing, too, that was very common. And then the rejoinder is, yes, but those things are regulated to the max. So we need perhaps more regulation for guns, which for some reason this country has a hard time swallowing because founded on pioneers, who had to make their own way and have their own weaponry to survive. Anyway, getting a little further afield, but the important message here is that with all the changes coming down, with all the twists and turns of fate that we can hardly understand what's happening and why it's happening and how could it be happening, all of it is helpful in trying to better understand what we're up against as a culture, what we're up against individually, what is the real nature of the human condition, how can we articulate our deepest values and make a difference. It's challenging us to try to make a difference and to try to find enlightenment, because Uranus is all about finding enlightenment, as the Grateful Dead put it, in the strangest of places. The line is, once in a while you can get shown the light in the strangest of places if you look at it right. And I think that's very true and very wise, and it has something to do with these outer planet transits which are happening all the time. Uranus, incidentally, is in a very close aspect to Neptune in this configuration, Neptune being another of these outer planets that take us beyond the physical. So there's a very spiritual side to what's going on. We can use this time to better understand ourselves, better understand our world, and the spiritual values that really hold us together beyond what we have in the physical plane, which is, the pure materialistic approach of this culture has got to have a counter in terms of, a view of the beyond that actually makes some sense, whatever makes the most sense to you. By the way, there's one more aspect in this that I'd like to show you. There's two, actually. One is the fact that this is Mercury. That Mercury is in quintile to Pluto. That's that's a fifth of the chart, so it's actually 72 degrees. And you can, in the time passages software, you can put the mouse on this line, and this line is explained as Mercury quintile within a degree with Pluto. So that's important to recognize, that there is this minor aspect. I can click on it and get a little explanation of that, as though it was a natal chart. And this tells us that there's more consciousness involved. Mercury in Scorpio, ruled by Pluto, quintile to Pluto. There's an awareness of the necessity for starting over, the value of sometimes starting over, losing parts of ourselves that we are habituated to and we didn't expect to lose, but somehow we realize that to go further with our spiritual evolution, we have to give something up. And that's the consciousness that is really the value of what's going on with these things. When we can see that, when we can see the higher end of things, and when we can lift our eyes from being panicked and afraid to really looking at what's going on at a deep level. Now, another thing that's really prominent, only because it's so close, is there's actually a septile. I don't know if I can show that in here or not. May not be activated, but there's a septile, which is 1/7 of the entire 360 degrees. It's 51 degrees, 23 minutes between Jupiter at 2 degrees of Scorpio and Saturn at 23 degrees. If you add it up, you'll see that 5123 comes to right very close, within 1/10 of a degree, really, to the Saturn. So Jupiter and Saturn are activated also at the same time in this configuration, and that's really telling. I think that is a little bit of a preview of the fact that Saturn and Pluto are coming together at the end of the decade, as 2020 draws to a close in October, November of 2020. Jupiter and Saturn form a triple conjunction in Capricorn with Pluto. So this is a powerful time. And then, of course, it's followed by immediately when Jupiter actually finally catches up to Saturn exactly. It's in the first degree of Aquarius, 0 Aquarius. So this is the first Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in an air sign for some time now. It's been in earth signs. So it's very important. We are entering the age of Aquarius. We're entering a time of brotherhood and helping each other and trying to put an end to divisiveness. And then the reaction against that, no, let's have divisiveness. Let's not go crazy with brotherhood here. So, we have all that happening right now as we head into the end of the decade. And we have, in this particular configuration of October 19th, 2017, we have Jupiter in aspect, septile aspect that's quite close at the timing of the new moon, which is significant, therefore. It's a bit of a dark connection. The septile brings hidden things to light. It has a bit of a scorpionic twist to it as well. So Jupiter with Saturn, the social planets, big social changes are part of what's going on right now. We see it in the exposure of Harvey Weinstein and what he was up to, getting away with for so many years. And the changes that it's bringing to the culture, the awareness that's coming with that, the awareness of some of the deficits of the culture of corruption that we have as revealed in Washington, D.C. The most recent scandal, the pharmaceutical industry was turning a blind eye to the opioid epidemic, as revealed in 60 Minutes, this most recent 60 Minutes last Sunday. If you haven't seen it, you should check it out. Putting lobbyists in place to, and some of them had been previously DEA employees, to kind of curtail the action of the DEA. There's finally a bill that was passed and signed by Obama that in the previous administration that inhibited the regulatory powers of the DEA just when they needed to be at their height, because the opioid epidemic was happening, and the DEA was almost powerless to stop it because their hands were tied by this bill that said you can't go after distributors or something. I forget what it was exactly, but something against the proper functioning of the government as a regulatory agency. So basically we're at what I'm talking about with Jupiter and with Saturn and coming in connection with each other now and at the end of the decade. We're in this big watershed time of change and of the society going through its convulsions and its evolution, and it's up to us where that evolution will take us. So I think that's what I wanted to say about this. We may have some questions, I don't know. We don't. Okay. Well, this has been a transmission from your friendly new moon astrologer, right on the new moon, and we'll take a comment if you have one, but if we don't, that's fine too. I'll switch back. Let's see, how do I do that? Switch back here to me, and I think that's fine. We don't need to do questions. It's been kind of an intense configuration, an intense conversation, and we'll just let it lie there. Something to think about. See you in the next couple of weeks. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.